Hi guys, this is Unit 4, Segment 1. The unit itself is photosynthesis and cellular respiration, but Segment 1 is going to hit on energy. I just want to take a second and remind you guys about how the Cornell note-taking method works. You put in the bulk, if this is your sheet of paper right here, you put in the bulk of your sheet the notes that's actually on the slides, the verbiage, the words that are there. Okay? And then off to the side, you will summarize the main ideas. You will write down any questions that you have to ask me as you watch these notes. Put any diagrams that you want to squeeze in here on the side. If they're larger diagrams, which you're going to be making in this unit, you can put them in the big area. And then you want to summarize what's down there in this space. Summarize also what's going on this page. So that way you can go back and you can refer back to different notes, different sheets, based on what you're trying to study. Okay, so for Segment 1, we're looking at energy, and so here's the list of vocab. Not very much. This Segment 1 is super fast. Energy, autotroph, heterotroph, ATP, and ADP are the vocab words. Energy is the ability, is defined as the ability to do work, and all cells need energy to actually make food. Where does the energy come from? The sun. So plants are going to be able to convert the sunlight right into food through the process of photosynthesis. There's the vocab word autotroph, automatic. These are plants. These are going to be organisms that have the ability to automatically make their own food. They do not have to go out and eat something. They can make their own food using the sunlight. Okay, so plants are an example of an autotroph. Heterotrophs are going to be organisms that have to consume other organisms for energy. They have to actually eat food. And any kind of animal is going to be a heterotroph. So you and I, mosquitoes, random things like that, fish and birds, reptiles, all of those things are going to be heterotrophs. They have to get their energy for every cell by eating things. The molecule of energy that you've already learned is called ATP. ATP, adenine triphosphate, is what the formal name is, which you do not need to know. But it is composed of 3 parts. Adenine, which is a protein. Ribose, which is a 5-carbon sugar, if you guys remember the macromolecules. And then there's 3 phosphate groups tacked on to the side. Please draw this image in your notes, okay, and you should label it. So here is your adenine. This is the end, this is the adenine. The middle is your 5 carbons, so there's 5 corners here. 5-carbon ribose. And then we have our 3 phosphate group, which is the adenine triphosphate. Adenine triphosphate, there's 3 phosphates. And those are our energy molecules that are inside the cell. And if you remember the organelles associated with any kind of energy, can you name the 2? Okay, it is the chloroplast and the mitochondria. So ATP is going to be associated with those 2 organelles. ADP is adenine diphosphate. Di means 2, so the difference between these 2, the ADP and the ATP, is definitely the phosphates, the number of phosphates. So they both have adenine, and they both have the ribose, the 5-carbon sugar, and then they have 2 phosphate groups attached to the sugar. Please draw this in your notes and label the parts, and notice how there is only 2 phosphate groups. So there is a difference, and you need to know them. So this next slide is comparing the 2. So we have ATP versus ADP. ATP has 3 phosphate groups, and ADP has 2. Energy is stored in the 3rd phosphate group. So if energy is primarily stored in the 3rd phosphate group, does ADP have as much energy as ATP? And the answer is no, because it doesn't have the 3rd phosphate group. So energy is released by breaking the bond between the 2nd and the 3rd group. When that is broken, so in this example we have ATP here. We've got, and it looks a little different, but these are the 3 phosphate groups. Okay, There's 1, 2, and 3. And this is your ribose, and this is your adenine. This is showing the full battery because it has all the energy that it could possibly have because it has all 3 phosphate groups. But ADP is missing a phosphate group, so it doesn't have all of its energy, and so it is an empty battery. It needs to have another phosphate to make an ATP. So you don't have to write this down or anything, but I wanted to just show you another visual. We have our adenine, ribose, sugar, and our 3 phosphates. It's kind of giving you a visual about where the energy is. There's a little bit of energy that's there within this bond. There's a little bit more here, and then there's a lot that's here. So without this particular bond, which happens with ADP, they don't have that. They have less energy. Well, what do we need ATP for? Well, guys, what have we been talking about? Active transport. Do you remember active transport going against the concentration gradient? So we need power. We need fuel to do that, and ATP is that fuel. What about the ribosomes that are making the proteins, right? And what about the organelles that are repairing those proteins? So they need energy, so the ATP is used for that. And then remember the enzyme, remember the lock and key enzyme little drawings and processes that we learned? This is ATP actually activates receptor sites on the enzymes for the lock and key model method. A little note about the storage of ATP. Cells actually keep very low store of ATP because it can't store energy in the long term. It's very, it doesn't last very long, the molecule itself. So energy is only stored for just a few milliseconds in ATP form. Remember how energy is stored in the form of the macromolecule of fat. You know, go back to that idea. But this ATP it's not a long-term storage of energy. And that's it, you guys.